A problem that a character can walk away from is a book a reader can walk away from. Unknown.
You're listening to Writing Roots, brought to you by Aspen House Publishing.
Welcome to Writing Roots. I am Leigh Hull.
And I'm Leigh Esses.
What are we talking about today?
Alpha readers and developmental editors.
Can you explain what that means?
So the very first person to have eyes on your work besides you is going to be your alpha readers and your developmental editors. They're a little bit different in that alpha readers are just kind of like your fan club. So for me, it's often my fight choreographer. It isn't somebody involved in the writing process. They're not somebody who is remotely interested in writing. Perhaps they just like reading. The developmental editor is often another author. For a lot of us, I believe it's the writing club, where we'll toss around concepts, and this is often during the writing process. So in the book that I just finished writing in January of this year, 2019, the bad guy died a certain way, and I sent it to my alpha reader, and he's like, "That is a really lame death. I don't like it. Do it again." And I did, and I agree, it's a much better death this time, and the rest of them lived happily ever after.
So let's talk first about the alpha readers. What is it about alpha readers that is beneficial to have while you're writing a story?
As much as we like to pretend, authors can't know everything. And writing...
What?
I know. Writing only what you know makes for a really boring book. Research is a vital part, and if you are just tuning in for the first time, I recommend you go back to our Getting It Written. And there are a lot of dangers in research, but it's also important to get things right. And your alpha readers are often your experts. The British Car Club will read the racing scene or whatever. Somebody who will be the most critical. Also, if you're writing about particularly sensitive groups, cultures that you aren't already a part of, or the LGBT community, having somebody who is most likely to be offended by your writing is incredibly useful in having your alpha readers and beta readers.
Developmental editors are also a huge help. When you have a developmental editor, you want someone who is already skilled in writing and in those principles so they can read what you have and not just be able to say, well, I didn't really like this part, but explain why they didn't like that part. Leigh Esses is my developmental editor. She's read what I have written so far in my book, and it's while I'm still writing it that she's reading it. That I can go, she knows my characters, she knows kind of where I want to go with it. When I run into a situation where I'm not sure what to write next, I can usually go to Leigh Esses and say, hey, I'm having some struggles with this, I'm not sure where to go, and she'll be able to give me suggestions because she knows my characters and the kind of things that they'll do. So that's what a developmental editor can do, is just really help you key in on your progression. It's super helpful as a pantser to keep me guided toward my end goal and not just wandering wherever I feel like.
One of the things I hear from a lot of authors out there is, I don't want to tell anyone about my book because I don't want anyone else to steal my concept, steal my story. How would you as an editor answer that?
I would answer that as, only you can write the story that you have in your head. If you think about all of the different stories out there, there's really only maybe like 5 total plot lines out there, but they're all told in such new and interesting ways with different characters that we don't even notice it as readers. We know that they're different books, that they're different ideas. So if you're worried about somebody stealing your idea and you're not giving them the final manuscript, I really wouldn't worry about it because only you can tell your own story.
Yeah. There's a difference between writing the novel, which is the actual work part, and that's the part that people don't accomplish when they don't complete writing a novel. It's not that they haven't thought of how it ends, it's that they don't actually do the work to sit down to write it. There's a huge difference between that and just tossing concepts around. How often do we look at a writing prompt and go, oh, it'd be interesting to take this in a time travel route or whatever? It doesn't mean that credit has to be given to your developmental editors. If you do want to give credit to your developmental editors or your alpha readers, then the dedication in your book is a great place to do that. One of my favorite dedications is big thanks to my wife and kids, without whom this book would have been written 4 years earlier, or something like that. It's like dedications are a great place to acknowledge the people who have helped you along your path that aren't necessarily credited as editors or whatever.
What is one of the things that you need to be careful about doing as an author that's going to alpha readers and developmental editors?
The biggest thing is to take ownership of it. One of the most dangerous paths you can take is to change everything that is suggested to you. I've seen one author present her book, her magnum opus, to the writing club, and everyone had a different opinion of how to refine it. There's definitely something needs to be addressed here, but it's up to you as an author to address it. Make it yours. Don't take every suggestion that comes to you.
If you do try to take every suggestion that comes to you, it usually ends up being really scattered and very difficult to follow.
Yeah.
And your readers
you do
will
more
not,
damage than good.
Yeah, your readers will just not enjoy the process.
Picking out an alpha reader or a developmental editor is a super difficult task, but there are some obvious don't use these people. And for me in my life, that is my grandmother.
Oh, honey, but it's just so good.
It's perfect in every way. Don't change a thing. As much as I need that ego boost, I know to go to grandmother for that ego boost when I know I need it, but I also know that that's not going to help me make a better book. So I go to people who know what they're talking about, other authors or possibly members of my research team, and go to them and go, okay, does this make sense? Is this the best way we can convey this information?
Especially when it comes to really either category, alpha readers and your developmental editors, they should be looking for things like continuity and plot holes and making sure that everything meshes across the entire story. And you want somebody that can come to you with a question and say, hey, this was never answered, or this doesn't make sense. Somebody that can give you that constructive criticism.
And also, if you're discussing over coffee how your magic system works, and then later you have this conversation with them, oh yeah, and then he does this with the magic, and they go, wait, I thought that couldn't work because you were talking about doing your magic system this way. And then you can let them know, oh yeah, we're going to change it because this is a cool plot point, and then they can help keep you true to your own story as you're writing the book. It is highly suggested that you don't let anyone read it until you finish writing your book. But if you do, that tends to be your alpha readers or your developmental editors.
Why is it that you should be careful about sharing your work before it's done?
We sign off with it every episode. And that is, we need to make sure whenever we are writing, we are
writing selfishly.
Yes. If you are sharing it with other people, all of a sudden you aren't your own target audience. And that selfishness, that deep dive into the self-discovery that comes with writing a novel, that falls to the wayside if you're writing to make sure that this person that you know is satisfied with the story instead of yourself. You need to be satisfied with the story yourself before and above anybody else.
Another reason why you should be very careful about sharing your work before it's done is that satisfaction. A lot of us are writing stories and sharing stories because we want other people to know these worlds that we've built in our minds and sharing a little piece of ourselves. But if we're doing that too often along the way, then we lose the drive to finish it because we're getting that satisfaction in middle of the process. So if you have somebody who is the developmental editor or your alpha reader, be cautious that you're not sharing it with them because you want that satisfaction. It's because you need something from them.
Another thing to keep in mind is your fans, the readers, the people who are looking at your book will also want to go, oh, I really hope these two characters fall in love, or they'll want to contribute to the story. If your writing is the best it can be and everyone is just tripping over themselves with excitement every time you write something, then they're going to hope that you finish it a certain way. I think a good example is Game of Thrones and how everyone was really disappointed in how the story ended because they all wanted to feel like their conclusion was the correct conclusion. If you lose track of your own ideas in order to satisfy other people, then it's not your story being told anymore.
And that goes back to the know when something needs to change. Know when you need to stick with your ideas, your story, and when you need to take that constructive criticism and apply it.
How to know when is based around the people you're talking to. Again, grandma, not terribly useful, but editors in my own genre are super useful, like yourself. People you trust. And that's why having a writing club is incredibly important, because you build a trust with each other and you start to learn each other's skill sets.
So just to kind of wrap up a little bit, you have alpha readers
Who are not writers.
Yeah, people who just read your work, give a little bit of advice here or there, have some sort of expert in an aspect of your writing, or just maybe they're really avid readers and can tell you whether or not you told a good story.
Yeah.
And then you have your developmental editors who
Tend to be writers.
tend to be writers, tend to be editors. Your developmental editors help you with the more specific aspects of your writing.
So I hope everyone has a clearer idea of what an alpha reader is, what a developmental editor is. And don't worry, there are a lot of different kinds of editors, and we'll be going over that next month in our final draft series. But until then,
Write selfishly.
If you have a question or comment for our hosts or a topic you'd like us to cover, send us an email at writingroots@aspenhousepublishing.com or find us on Facebook by searching for Aspen House Publishing.